All right, guys, sorry, got kind of cut off there by the little 10-minute time limit. So we were back at this problem, and we had just subtracted by 13x, and I was explaining I write the negative 13x first because it's slope-intercept form, and that's what we want. We want the x term first. Well, now we're at our very final step of this problem, and we have to divide by -7 because that y has to be completely isolated. Now notice, I naturally tend to write these as separate divisions, but I want people to start getting used to seeing it this way as well. This is divided by -7. Well, that means it's got to happen to both of those pieces. That cancels out, and I get y equals -13 over -7. Well, I know it's going to be positive because negative divided by negative is positive. And then I look at the numbers, 13 over 7. That doesn't simplify. So it just ends up being a 13 over 7x. Negative 42 divided by a -7 is going to be a positive, and that does go in evenly. It's going to be a positive 6. So there's our answer. Let's hope that shows up. -13/7 plus 6. Perfect. Perfect. Number 8, we're going in the same sort of direction. It's a little bit of an easier problem. We've got x minus 4y equals 16. What we have to do is get y by itself. So I subtract x from both sides. Those cancel. I get -4y equals -x plus 16. Finally, I've got to divide everything by -4. Let's switch colors, go with divide by -4. That cancels, and what I get is y equals, and then I have to be careful. This 4 goes to both pieces. So this is a negative and a negative. I know it's going to be positive, but what number was in front of that x is a hidden 1. Okay, so if we want to write this as a slope, as a fraction, we're going to have a -1 divided by a -4. That's a positive 1/4, because negative divided by negative is positive. And then over here, the 16 and a -4, those do go into each other evenly, and ends up being a -4. So where's our answer? Right there at A. All right. On to number 9. They give us a point, and they give us a slope. Some alarms need to start going off in your head that we're thinking y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. And you don't have to memorize that. It's on your formula sheet. And they call it point slope form. Okay? Point slope. Okay? It's got it right there in the name. Point slope form. There it is, right there. So I need to name these things. This is my x1, and this is my y1, and of course this is my m. And those 3 things are going to plug in there, there, and there every time. So we have y minus y1. So minus, always minus, and then a 5 equals m, which is 0, times x minus x1. Well, minus x1 is minus a -5. And we learned that these 2 symbols, they come together and make a plus sign. Okay? So I just erase that on out of the way. And those come together to be a plus sign. Finish off my parentheses. Well, now I'm ready to distribute because I want to eventually get y all by itself. But before I can move this -5 over, I've got to get these things out from being trapped. That 0 distributes. So what I have is y minus 5 equals, well, that's going to be 0 times x, which is 0, plus 0 times 5, which is 0. What that means is all I've got left on the right-hand side is 0. Add 5. Add 5, those will cancel, and we get y equals 5. Answer should have been C. Okay? A lot of people look at that and they're like, wait, that shouldn't end up like that. You know, this is one of the questions that'll get someone that's guessing. Someone that's just guessing at these sort of things, they're never going to pick that simple answer. They're going to look at it and say, oh, that one's way too simple. It's got to be one of these complicated ones. Not necessarily a slope of 0. Slope of 0 means this is a horizontal line at y equals 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And anything that's a horizontal line has a slope of 0. Didn't have to graph it, but that's just kind of so you see it. Number 10, alarms going off in my head again, guys. It's got to be that same formula. We're still thinking that it's got to be point slope formula because they gave us a point. Now what they didn't give us was a slope, but I know how to find that. Slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So that means I've got to name these points. I'm going to call this x1 and y1 because that's my first point. And this is going to be x2 and y2 because that's my second point. And now I'm going to let the calculator take over from here. I don't want to mess up this crazy fraction and all these negative signs flying around. So I second quit. second mode to get out of there, I want a fraction bar. You can tell I'd already done it with one of my first block classes. I want to do y2. Well, y2 it says is -2. Always minus whatever y1 was, which that looks like that was a 4 in this case. So we have a 4. Now we arrow down and we want to do x2, which is 1 minus whatever x1 was, which is -3. -3. I don't know why that's doing that. -3. Okay. Now remember, we learned you can take these two signs, minus and negative, and combine them together, make them a plus sign. Our calculator knows how to do that, though. It already knows how to do that, so you can just press enter right there, and it'll give you your slope. Slope is -3/2. Okay. Slope equals -3/2. And now we're ready to plug this into the formula. Remember, it was y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. And we're plugging in there, there, and there. Okay, change color so we see where we plug stuff in. We get y minus y1. So again, I named this point x1 and y1 just because it was written first. You can name them whichever one you want. Just be careful and be consistent. So y minus 4, got it, equals m, which was -3/2. We got that right there. Times x minus x1, which would be minus a -3. Well, I know that minus a -3, those two signs come together and give me a +3, okay? Again, before I can move this 4 around, I've got to do this distribution. So I'm taking this -3/2 and distributing it in. I have y minus 4 equals -3/2 x, because this would be -3/2 times a 1, which is just -3/2 x, plus, or actually minus, because this is a negative, but I'm going to just let my calculator solve that for me, guys. I've got -3/2 was my last answer. So if I just type in an operation like multiply, my calculator says, hey, I'm assuming you want to multiply that last answer by -3/2. And that is what I want, or by 3. And that is what I want to do, because look, -3/2 times 3. So all I'm doing is multiplying by 3. If you don't like that, you can just type in the fraction again, okay? Not a big deal. Press enter and I get -9/2. You're like, all right, let the calculator do the hard part, get -9/2. I'm looking, still not one of my answers, because look, I don't have y quite all the way by itself. It's close, but it's not quite done. I add 4 to both sides. And guys, just because this is a whole number and this is a fraction, they're both just regular old numbers. They don't have any variables or anything crazy going on. They're just regular old numbers, okay? So we go to add those together. Again, I'm going to let my calculator do the hard part. I want to do that -9/2 I got for an answer. That's what I want to use, and I want to add 4 to it. So if I do plus, our calculator says, hey, I think you want to use that last answer, right? And I do. Plus 4, press enter. Again, you can type in the fractions again if you do better that way. It's not a big deal. I get a -1/2. So I have y equals -3/2 x, and then this all totaled up to be -1/2. I'm looking for that answer. There it is.